Listen closely, sentinel of sleepless nights, as history's sands shift beneath your feet. Envision senses assaulted by merciless dawn. The Egyptian desert sprawls like molten canvas, October 1942. Sun-scorching air into perilous haze. Winds whispering grit of hidden doom. Minds lurking as patient assassins in Rommel's devil's gardens, poised to erupt in fury. Here, on the brink of El Alamein, you awaken as a British sapper in the 8th Army's Royal Engineers. Your world, a delicate balance of probe and prayer, where survival hinges on the faintest tremor in the earth. If this forgotten fortitude captivates, a like or subscribe sustains these shadows. Comment. From what shore or city do you join? At what hour clock mock rest? Yield to subtle embrace. Mind wanders like nomadic breezes, reclining into comfort as we don weathered boots of quiet warrior, ingenuity battling invisibility, desert lessons unfolding in endurance's whispers. The first flicker of consciousness arrives not as a soft unraveling of dreams, but as a brutal assault, a cascade of light that pierces like molten spears, transforming the horizon into a forge where the sky itself seems to melt. You blink against the onslaught, yet the glare persists, relentless as a creditor demanding payment from an empty purse. The Egyptian desert in October 1942 stretches before you, an infinite parchment scorched by the sun's indifferent quill, each dune a frozen wave in a sea of forgotten tempests. And there you lie, cradled in a slit trench scarcely deeper than a grave's rehearsal. The earth beneath you, a bed of pulverized stone that clings to your uniform like an unwanted lover. Your throat constricts first, a parched ravine where saliva has long since evaporated, leaving only the phantom taste of dust. Gritty, metallic, as if you've swallowed the remnants of ancient battles. The air hangs heavy, infused with the acrid tang of sweat-soaked wool and the faint, underlying rot of distant oases turned sour under the Axis advance. Skin pulls taut across your cheeks, cracked and flaking like old leather left to the whims of a careless artisan, while beads of perspiration form unbidden, tracing salty paths that sting like accusations. Around you, the vastness mocks any notion of shelter. No trees offer shade, no clouds dare intervene. Only the endless undulation of sand that whispers promises of burial with every gust. Yet amid this desolation, purpose anchors you. You are no mere wanderer in this wasteland. You serve as a sapper in the Royal Engineers of the 8th Army, a cog in Montgomery's grand machine poised on the cusp of El Alamein. Having trudged from the chaotic retreat at Dunkirk, through the Mediterranean's treacherous swells, to this North African inferno, your hands bear the calluses of survival, marks from rigging bridges under fire, from defusing booby traps that grin with malicious ingenuity. The journey has etched lines into your face, premature etchings that speak of nights spent evading Luftwaffe shadows, of comrades reduced to echoes in the wind. Now, here in the cradle of antiquity turned theatre of modern carnage, your role sharpens to a fine, deadly point. To tame the untamable, to carve safe passages through fields sown with death. For the enemy here wears no uniform, bears no rifle slung across a shoulder. Rommel's devil's gardens sprawl across the landscape, a perverse horticulture of buried malice. Hundreds of thousands of telemines, those squat, disc-shaped sentinels designed to crumple tanks with a pressure-triggered roar, their 200-kilogram threshold a cruel joke on the weight of human folly. Interwoven among them lurk the S-mines, dubbed Bouncing Betty by those who've witnessed their macabre ballet. Pressure on a prong sends them leaping skyward like startled demons, detonating at waist height to shower shrapnel in a lethal arc. turning men into scattered puzzles. These are not mere obstacles. They form labyrinths engineered by the desert fox himself. Kilometers of concealed treachery meant to halt the Allied tide, to bleed the Eighth Army dry before the real clash begins. And you, with your probing tools and steady nerve, must unravel this knot of iron and explosive, one cautious inch at a time. As you haul yourself upright, the trench's walls crumble slightly under your palms, sending cascades of fine particles that cling like accusations of frailty. The sun climbs higher, indifferent to your discomfort, baking the ground into a skillet where even scorpions seek refuge. In moments like these, thoughts drift unbidden to greener realms, to the misty fields of England, where rain falls like a benediction and hedges bloom without the threat of hidden fangs. How quaint that world seems now, a postcard from a life uninterrupted by the grind of empires colliding. Back there, a misstep might mean a twisted ankle on a country lane. Here, it invites oblivion, a sudden bloom of fire that erases all but the echo of regret. Yet, there's a bitter amusement in the contrast, isn't there? The desert, with its stark honesty, strips away illusions, forcing you to confront the absurdity of human endeavor, planting flags on shifting grains, as if permanence could be wrested from chaos. Nevertheless, resilience stirs within, a quiet defiance born of necessity. You reach for your canteen, the water inside tepid and rationed, swallowing it down like a sacrament against the encroaching thirst. The Eighth Army's ranks swell with men like you, drawn from corners of the empire, each carrying fragments of home in their kit bags. A faded photograph, a letter creased from rereading. From Dunkirk's beaches, where the sea swallowed dreams of quick victory, to this parched frontier, the path has been one of adaptation, of learning to read the earth's subtle betrayals. The Polish mine detector, that cumbersome marvel gifted by exiled ingenuity, promises to hasten the task, its electronic hum a modern oracle divining buried curses. But technology alone won't suffice. It's the sapper's intuition, honed through trial and near miss, that truly tips the scales. As the heat intensifies, wrapping around you like a shroud woven from flames, you scan the horizon where faint mirages dance, ghostly tanks or infantry that dissolve upon closer scrutiny. The Devil's Gardens wait beyond, a silent adversary that demands patience over bravado, precision over haste. Tonight, under the moon's pale gaze, you'll venture into that domain, bayonet in hand, to etch a fragile vein of safety through the peril. For now, though, the day unfolds in languid torment, a prelude that tests the spirit as surely as any explosion. In this limbo, reflections surface unbidden. How fragile the thread of existence, how easily severed by the whims of distant generals. Yet, in that fragility lies a profound lesson, one that echoes across eras. To cherish the mundane, to value the unscarred moments, for in the shadow of such vast indifference, every breath becomes a quiet rebellion. The trench offers scant reprieve, its shallow confines a reminder of vulnerability, but you settle into routine, brushing sand from your gear with mechanical motions. The uniform, olive drab faded to a weary khaki, chafes against sunburned flesh, while boots, caked with the residue of endless marches, feel like anchors tethering you to this alien soil. Companions stir nearby, their groans mingling with the wind's low moan, each man a mirror of your own exhaustion. Among them, the weight of history presses down. El Alamein looms not just as a battle, but as a pivot where the tide might turn, where the Axis advance could shatter against Allied resolve. Your part, though unglamorous, underpins it all, clearing the way, quite literally, for the armoured behemoths and foot soldiers who will charge through the breaches you forge. In quieter lulls, the mind wanders to parallels unseen, how today's burdens, in some distant future, might seem as remote as Pharaoh's curses, yet the essence remains, enduring the unendurable, finding slivers of meaning in the grind. The desert, with its timeless cruelty, teaches that survival isn't mere luck, but a tapestry of choices. Each probe into the soil a gamble weighted by knowledge. And so, as the sun arcs mercilessly overhead, you breathe deeply, letting the rhythm steady your pulse, a subtle armor against the encroaching dread. The night will come soon enough, with its own symphony of risks, but for this fleeting interlude, existence narrows to the simple act of persistence, a testament to the human spark that flickers even in the heart of desolation. A shadow falls across your vision, abrupt yet familiar, pulling you from the haze of half-formed reveries where the sun's tyranny momentarily recedes. It's him, the figure who materializes like a specter forged from the desert's own grit, his silhouette etched against the climbing blaze. Sergeant Miller, or simply Sarge, in the murmured shorthand of trench talk, bends low, his calloused hand gripping your shoulder with the firmness of a man who knows hesitation invites ruin. His face hovers close, a map of weathered canyons carved by years under foreign skies, from the chaotic beaches where the sea spat back the defeated, to this barren stage where empires claw for dominance. Eyes like polished flint meet yours, unyielding yet laced with a quiet knowing, as if they've stared into too many voids and emerged with secrets intact. He doesn't waste breath on pleasantries. Words are rations here, doled out sparingly. Instead, he murmurs a gruff summons, his voice a low rumble that cuts through the ambient drone of distant engines and the ceaseless sigh of shifting grains. Up with you, lad. The fox doesn't sleep, and neither do his surprises. The reference hangs unspoken, a nod to the elusive general whose cunning has turned this expanse into a graveyard of ambitions. Miller straightens, his frame lean and unbowed despite the toll of evacuations and advances, a testament to the peculiar alchemy that transforms retreat into resolve. From Dunkirk's frantic shores, where he orchestrated hasty demolitions amid the whine of Stukas, he carries the ghosts of those left behind, men who trusted his expertise only to be claimed by the tide or the sky. As you rise, shaking off the lethargy that clings like invisible chains, he begins the ritual, the imparting of wisdom that feels less like instruction and more like an inheritance passed in the dim light of inevitability. He gestures toward the horizon, where the gardens await, invisible yet omnipresent, a web spun from steel and spite. Remember the teller, he says, his tone measured, as if reciting a liturgy against chaos. Those insidious discs, squat and unassuming, buried just beneath the surface, engineered to awaken only under the crush of armored weight. 200 kilograms of pressure unleashing a blast that rends metal like paper, scattering crews in a haze of smoke and regret. He describes them with a detached precision, his words painting them as patient predators, content to slumber until provoked, their circular forms echoing the futile cycles of conflict that loop endlessly across maps redrawn in blood. But then he shifts, his expression darkening like a sudden squall, to the true devils among them, the S-mines, those leaping harbingers that soldiers have christened Bouncing Betty in a macabre affection, as if naming the horror diminishes its grip. She's a dancer, that one, he intones, a wry twist curling his lip, the humor emerging from some deep well of resignation. where laughter defies the absurdity of courting death nightly. Triggered by a mere prong's disturbance, it propels upward in a grotesque pirouette, detonating at hip level to unleash a storm of fragments, carving arcs of devastation that spare no one within their radius. 20 meters of indiscriminate wrath, he explains, his voice threading the facts with the weight of witnessed aftermaths. Limbs twisted, futures erased in an instant's caprice. It's in these distinctions, he insists, that life teeters. One misjudged shape beneath the soil, and the line between advance and annihilation blurs irretrievably. Yet, the true adversary eludes the eye, a phantom woven into the very fabric of the terrain. Rommel's ingenuity has sown these fields with malice, kilometers of subterranean snares designed to thwart Montgomery's impending surge, turning open ground into a mosaic of peril where progress mocks the bold. The gardens represent more than obstacles. They embody a strategy of attrition, bleeding the assailant before the clash, forcing every forward inch to be bartered with vigilance. Miller recounts how the fox layered them. Tellers for the behemoths of steel, Bettys for the flesh that follows. His narrative laced with a subtle irony, as if the elegance of such engineering belies the barbarity it serves. In his telling, the minds become extensions of a distant will, impartial arbiters that level kings and conscripts alike, a democratic reaper in a war of hierarchies. He pauses, offering a canteen with water that's grown stale in the heat, a gesture that speaks volumes in its simplicity. As you drink, he shares fragments of his odyssey, not in boast, but in quiet communion. The loss of a squad to a concealed wire in the dunes, a trip that summoned Betty's fatal leap, leaving only silence and scattered remnants. We learn, or we join them, he mutters, the observation slipping out like a sigh, born from the hollow where hope once resided, now filled with the pragmatism of perpetual peril. There's no judgment in his gaze, only the shared burden of those who probe the unknown, their tools extensions of trembling hands. The interaction deepens, his presence an anchor amid the flux, reminding you that mastery here stems not from bravado, but from the accumulated scars of near misses. In these exchanges, a subtle parallel emerges, unvoiced yet resonant, the minds as metaphors for life's unseen pitfalls, those buried pressures that erupt without warning, demanding the same unflinching scrutiny in modern mazes of obligation and doubt. Miller's lessons transcend the tactical, honoring the lineage of endurance that binds eras. From pharaohs who tamed the Nile, to engineers who defy the desert's deceit. His humor surfaces again, a barbed quip about the Germans' courteous explosives, which discriminate not by allegiance, but by accident, a chiding nod to the farce of fair play in fields rigged for ruin. It draws a reluctant chuckle, the sound fragile against the vast quiet, yet it forges a bond, a shared defiance against the encroaching void. As the conversation ebbs, he claps your back, the touch conveying volumes unsaid, the weight of command tempered by camaraderie, the knowledge that tomorrow's shadows depend on today's steadiness. The air thickens with implication, the gardens looming as a canvas for your impending artistry, where each disarmament defies destiny's cruel script. In his eyes, you glimpse the quiet fortitude that history reveres in hindsight, the unsung calculus of survival that elevates the ordinary to the eternal. And so, as the sun continues its ascent, casting elongated silhouettes that mimic forgotten sentinels, you absorb his counsel, feeling the mantle settle upon you, a guardian of passages, a whisperer to the buried beasts, in a theatre where every revelation courts revelation or ruin. The encounter lingers, a pivot in the day's inexorable march, infusing the mundane with profundity. Miller moves on to rouse others, his stride purposeful yet weighted, a living chronicle of conflicts that grind souls to finer dust. Left in contemplation, you ponder the irony of expertise born from evasion, the way wisdom accrues like layers of sediment, compressing failures into foundations. The fear simmers beneath, a subdued current that mirrors the hidden charges below, unseen until triggered, yet ever present in the pulse. It's this undercurrent that binds you to predecessors, to those who navigated similar abysses, their legacies etched not in stone, but in the paths cleared for posterity. Ultimately, his guidance illuminates the essence of resilience, a quiet alchemy that transmutes dread into deliberation, isolation into alliance. As the heat presses onward, unyielding in its siege, you carry forward this inheritance, a beacon amid the mirage, where the act of discerning danger becomes an ode to persistence, a subtle rebellion against the indifferent cosmos that scatters lives like grains in the gale. The ritual unfolds with the precision of a clockwork ghost, your fingers tracing familiar contours in the escalating warmth, as if the tools themselves harbor memories of past incursions. You begin with the bayonet, its edge dulled to a blunt whisper by deliberate intent, no longer a weapon for thrusting into flesh, but a delicate feeler for the earth's concealed veins, prodding softly to unearth secrets without awakening them prematurely. The metal feels cool against your palm, a fleeting mercy in the mounting blaze, its surface etched with nicks from encounters where the soil yielded grudgingly, revealing not treasure but traps poised to shatter the unwary. Beside it lies the Polish mine detector, a cumbersome relic of ingenuity born from exile, its weight pressing into your grip like the burden of borrowed genius. Crafted by a mind displaced by invasion, this device hums with electronic foresight, capable of accelerating the hunt through buried dangers at twice the pace of manual desperation. Its coils and dials a silent symphony against the symphony of peril. As you secure the pincers, those pliers forged for severing the invisible threads that bind destruction to the slightest tug, their jaws gleam with the promise of interruption, ready to snip the lifelines of mechanisms designed to outlast their creators. And then the Bangalore torpedoes, elongated tubes of latent fury, engineered decades prior in distant colonial outposts to blast through entanglements of wire and will, their explosive innards a calculated defiance against barriers that mock mobility. Each item slots into your kit with a click that echoes finality, a collection not of conquest, but of cautious unraveling, where victory measures in inches cleared rather than territories claimed. The act stirs a quiet irony within, as if assembling these instruments mirrors the piecing together of fractured resolve, tools that bridge the chasm between intent and outcome in a landscape indifferent to both. Meanwhile, Miller tends to his own sacrament, crouching over a makeshift stove shielded by a scrap of canvas that flutters like a weary flag of truce. He coaxes a flame from reluctant fuel, the fire's timid glow a defiant spark against the overwhelming luminance. And soon the aroma of brewing leaves permeates the air, a robust, almost defiant scent that cuts through the pervasive dryness like a memory intruding on oblivion. The tea steeps thick and unyielding, a concoction more sludge than elixir, yet in his hands it transforms into a talisman. Ah, the brew that bends fate, he quips under his breath, his voice threading amusement through the veil of fatigue, as if suggesting that this humble infusion could unravel even the knottiest of explosive knots. dissolving 200 lurking threats with a single sip. The jest lands with the weight of shadowed truth, born from nights where such fantasies sustain the spirit when strategy falters. A subtle mockery of the grand designs that reduce men to mere detonators in a larger scheme. You join him, accepting a tin mug that scorches your fingers. The heat a prelude to the liquid's bitter embrace, paired with bully beef scraped from a can, its salted essence clinging to hard biscuits that crunch like brittle bones under assault. The meal is rudimentary, a sustenance stripped to essentials, yet in its austerity lies a peculiar poetry. The Eighth Army's barrage of artillery, poised for the impending storm, mirrors this frugality, a colossal orchestration of shells that will rain like judgment from the heavens, the largest since the Great War's mud-choked fields, each boom a punctuation in the narrative of reversal. As you chew, the flavors mingle with dust, evoking distant hearths where meals nourish rather than merely fuel, a contrast that tugs at the edges of longing without mercy. In this interlude, a newcomer edges closer, his features still softened by the illusion of invincibility that fresh arrivals carry like ill-fitting armor. He poses the question that hovers unspoken among the ranks, his voice a tentative probe into the abyss. How does one summon the nerve to confront the unseen nightly when the ground itself conspires against revelation? Miller pauses, stirring his mug with a spoon that clinks like a distant warning, his response laced with the dry wit of one who's bargained with shadows too often. "It's the art of pretending the odds favor the fool," he replies, the words slipping out with a chuckle that masks the void beneath, as if acknowledging that persistence thrives on such delusions, where acknowledging the imbalance would unravel the fragile web holding sanity intact. The exchange deepens the air's thickness, drawing you into reflections where the preparation transcends the physical, a meditation on the threads that connect eras of strife, where tools like these echo the innovations of displaced minds, turning exile into empowerment. The Polish contraption, for instance, embodies that irony, its origins in upheaval yielding a lifeline that hastens the dance with danger, a gift from adversity that underscores how survival often springs from the ruins of prior defeats. As the tea cools, its steam curling like fleeting aspirations, you sense the undercurrent of melancholy, a shared acknowledgement that each assembly of gear is a rehearsal for potential farewell. Yet in that recognition blooms a subtle gratitude for the present's relative calm, a moment unmarred by the earth's sudden betrayals. The conversation ebbs as duties pull attention elsewhere, but the newcomer's query lingers, a ripple in the still pool of routine, evoking empathy for those uninitiated, their fears a mirror to the suppressed tremors within. Miller's guidance, dispensed without fanfare, honors the continuum of knowledge passed like a flame in the dark, illuminating paths not just through minefields, but through the labyrinths of doubt that plague all who confront the unknown. In his understated manner, he embodies the essence of fortitude, a quiet force that defies the spectacle of heroics, reminding that true mettle resides in the mundane preparations, the incremental acts that accumulate into legacies. As the sun asserts its dominance, casting distortions across the vista, you store the tools with care, each placement a silent vow against complacency. The biscuit's remnants crumble in your pocket, a humble reminder of sustenance's fragility, paralleling the broader theatre where Montgomery's forces gather momentum, their impending salvo a thunderous retort to prolong stagnation. The ritual complete, a hush settles, pregnant with anticipation, where the act of reading becomes a bridge to the inevitable, infusing the ordinary with the aura of predestination. In this suspended breath, the desert's vastness shrinks to the scale of personal reckoning, where every implement holds the potential to alter trajectories, a subtle nod to the enduring human capacity to impose order on entropy's canvas. The preparation, though rote, weaves a tapestry of introspection, where the tool's heft evokes the burdens carried across generations, from ancient sieges to this modern crucible, each era distilling lessons in perseverance. The tea's lingering bitterness on your tongue serves as a metaphor for the blend of resolve and resignation that flavors existence here, a concoction that sustains when hope wanes. And as the newcomer absorbs the scene, his initial trepidation softening into tentative acceptance, you feel the subtle kinship that binds the disparate, a collective armor against the isolation that war imposes. Ultimately, this intermission underscores the poetry in preparation, a quiet defiance where assembling arsenals against the intangible honors the spirit's tenacity, fostering a profound appreciation for the interludes of peace that punctuate turmoil. The day presses on, but in these moments, the essence of endurance crystallizes, a beacon for those navigating their own shadowed terrains, where readiness becomes the ultimate act of faith in the unfolding script of survival. A distant crack shatters the fragile veil of routine, like a thunderclap born from some vengeful deity hidden beyond the shimmering veil. The sound rolling across the barren expanse with the inevitability of a wave claiming a forgotten shore. The 80mm shell's whistle pierces the air first, a high-pitched lament that twists the gut, forcing bodies to crumple instinctively into the trench's meager embrace, heads bowed as if in supplication to an unseen judge. Dust kicks up in lazy spirals, mingling with the acrid bite of cordite that drifts on the breeze, a spectral reminder that the horizon harbors more than illusions, real harbingers of fragmentation, capable of reducing resolve to scattered remnants in an instant's caprice. You press low, heart slamming against ribs like a prisoner testing bars, the vibration echoing the earth's subtle tremors, those faint warnings that precede greater upheavals. As the echo fades into the vast silence, leaving only the ringing in ears and the collective exhale of those spared, the tension lingers, coiling tighter within, a serpent awakening from slumber to constrict the breath. It's in these abrupt interruptions that the mind races unchecked, weaving threads of what-ifs into a tapestry of dread, visions of shards tearing through fabric and flesh, of plans unraveled by random ordnance. The artillery serves as a punctuation in the day's narrative, a stark comma halting the flow, compelling reflection on the precarious balance where preparation meets the unpredictable. Yet amid the pulse's frantic rhythm, a peculiar detachment emerges, as if observing one's own fragility from afar, marveling at the absurdity of flesh defying such mechanical malice. The newcomer, his posture still rigid with the aftershock, voices the shadow that haunts the unspoken. How does one anchor the spirit when such specters loom, their arrival heralded by nothing more than a fleeting whine? His query hangs, vulnerable as an exposed wire, drawing eyes that hold mixtures of sympathy and weariness, for it echoes the internal dialogues that surface in quieter voids. Miller, ever the steady axis in this spinning chaos, responds with a tale drawn from memory's depths, recounting a moment from those frantic shores where waves lapped at heels while the sky rained fury, a squad pinned by similar barrages, their escape hinged on a split-second dive into cover that spared all but one. "We bent, but didn't break," he concludes, his tone laced with the quiet irony of one who's tallied the costs. implying that endurance often masquerades as mere luck, a cosmic jest where survival credits the crouch rather than the craft. In his recounting, the historical currents swirl beneath the surface, evoking Alamein's looming pivot, a clash not merely of forces but of fortunes, where the axis surge crests against a wall of resolve. Montgomery's orchestration poised to shatter the illusion of invincibility that Rommel's maneuvers have cultivated. The barrage to come, unprecedented in its scale since the muddied trenches of another era, promises a deluge of steel that will etch the sands with new scars, turning stagnation into momentum, a reversal scripted in fire and resolve. Yet, the tale underscores a deeper truth, unjudged and inexorable. Conflicts pivot on such fleeting instants, where the whine of a shell mirrors the unforeseen disruptions that derail trajectories, demanding adaptation as the price of continuance. As the group absorbs the anecdote, the stress accumulates like unseen layers of sediment, compressing the spirit under its weight, each heartbeat a metronome ticking toward the night's trial. The fear simmers, not as a roaring blaze, but a subtle undercurrent, eroding confidence like wind sculpting stone, fostering a kinship born from shared vulnerability. In these pauses, thoughts drift to parallels beyond the dunes, how contemporary burdens echo this build-up, invisible pressures mounting until they demand a reflexive duck, a momentary surrender to preserve the whole. The observation slips in, unbidden, a wry acknowledgement that life's ambushes, whether from ordnance or obligation, test the same fibre, rewarding those who heed the warning whistle with another dawn. Miller's consolation extends beyond words, a subtle gesture, a shared glance that conveys volumes, affirming that fear's presence doesn't equate to frailty, but rather to the acuity that sharpens survival. The newcomer's expression softens, the query's edge blunted by the narrative's balm, revealing how stories serve as salves, binding wounds before they gape. It's in this exchange that the group's cohesion solidifies, a fragile alloy forged in the heat of anticipation, where individual trepidations merge into collective fortitude, defying the isolation that vastness imposes. Breathing deepens now, a deliberate rhythm to counter the chaos's pull, each inhalation drawing in the parched essence, exhaling the accumulated strain, a simple rite that anchors the wandering mind. The advice emerges organically, woven into the moment's fabric. Let the breath become a bridge, spanning the gulf between alarm and equilibrium, much as historical tides teach that pauses precede pivots, offering space for renewal amid relentless advance. The humour surfaces faintly, a dark vein in the reflection, imagining the shell as an uninvited overseer, calling an abrupt assembly where attendance is compulsory, and evasion the only agenda, a satirical nod to the farce of control in realms governed by chance. The tension, though unrelenting, fosters a profound empathy, a silent communion with those who've navigated similar straits, their legacies a quiet testament to the human capacity for poise amid pandemonium. Alamein's shadow lengthens, not as a threat, but as a threshold, where the accumulation of such strains culminates in transformation, honouring the subtle artistry of withstanding the unforeseen. In this liminal space, the fear transforms, no longer a foe, but a sentinel, heightening awareness, reminding that gratitude for the present stems from acknowledging the precariousness that underpins all progress. As the day resumes its inexorable creep, the incident recedes, yet its imprint endures, a subtle scar on the psyche that enriches rather than diminishes, evoking a quiet reverence for the resilience that history extols in hushed tones. The group's movements regain fluidity, tempered by the episode's lesson, where each step forward defies the echo of that distant detonation, a defiant stride toward the encroaching dusk. The stress, in its ebb and flow, mirrors the desert's rhythms, unpredictable yet rhythmic, demanding surrender to the cycle, where release follows constriction, much as modern vigils yield to dawn's mercy. Ultimately, this interlude illuminates the essence of composure, a delicate equilibrium where apprehension fuels vigilance, transforming potential unraveling into reinforced resolve. The narrative of the day continues, infused with this newfound depth, where the sudden rupture serves not as disruption, but as catalyst, honoring the timeless dance of adaptation that binds the stranded to the steadfast. Twilight descends like a reluctant curtain, veiling the horizon in shades of bruised indigo, where the day's fiery dominion yields to the moon's pallid sovereignty, casting the dunes in a spectral glow that transforms familiar contours into enigmatic silhouettes. The transition carries an air of inexorable decree, as if the cosmos itself conspires to usher you toward the threshold, the air cooling just enough to tease relief, while retaining the residual warmth that seeps through your boots like lingering regrets. You slither from the trench's confines, body low against the undulating terrain, each movement a deliberate glide that minimizes silhouette against the starry vault, for visibility here invites scrutiny from watchful eyes perched on distant ridges, their scopes hungry for motion in the stillness. The crawl commences, a serpentine progression into the no-man's land that stretches like an uncharted void, where the boundary between safety and snare blurs into obscurity, the sand yielding softly under elbows and knees, its grains whispering secrets of prior passages long erased by the wind's capricious hand. The moon hangs aloof, an indifferent witness illuminating patches of pale luminescence, turning the landscape into a mosaic of light and shadow that plays tricks on perception, where every depression could conceal a fatal embrace. Your breath synchronizes with the rhythm of advance, shallow and measured, as if drawing too deeply might disturb the slumbering guardians below, those mechanical sentinels programmed for awakening at the slightest provocation. As you breach the perimeter, the valse begins in earnest, a languid choreography dictated by necessity rather than melody, where you kneel upon the yielding surface, the detector's probe extending like a tentative limb into the unknown, its electronic murmur a faint prelude to potential cataclysm. The device whirs softly, scanning for metallic anomalies buried in the strata, its sensitivity a double-edged blade, alerting to threats while amplifying the pulse's frantic cadence, each beep a heartbeat amplified, suspending time in that interminable pause between discovery and disaster. The bayonet follows, its tip grazing the substrate with the gentleness of a lover's touch, parting layers with exquisite care, revealing not the warmth of connection, but the cold indifference of engineered malice. Marking the path unfolds as a ritual of fragile assertion, ribbons of white tape unfurled like fragile lifelines across the expanse, delineating a corridor scarcely wider than a vehicle's tread, a slender artery through which the armored pulse of advance will flow, dependent on this nocturnal labor. The tape flutters faintly in the nocturnal zephyr, a pale serpent snaking toward the horizon, its placement a defiant inscription upon the blank slate of peril, where progress defies the entropy that seeks to reclaim all efforts in dust. Yet, in the act, a subtle mockery arises unbidden, the notion that such flimsy markers could impose order on a domain ruled by randomness, as if humanity's scribbles could outwit the subterranean architects of ruin. sensations intensify in the hush, the night's residual heat radiating upward through the granules, a subtle furnace that contrasts with the chill sweat tracing rivulets down your spine, mingling fear's essence with the physical toll, each droplet a testament to the body's silent protest against the mind's resolve. The air carries a crisp edge now, infused with the faint, metallic tang of anticipation, while distant murmurs, perhaps the hum of generators or the low converse of sentries, drift like ghosts, amplifying the isolation that envelops you, a solitary figure in a theatre where the audience remains concealed. In this suspended cadence, contemplation weaves through the motions, each probe evoking the weight of lives tethered to your precision. For the sapper's nocturnal vigil safeguards not just immediate comrades, but the broader surge, enabling the infantry stride and the tank's rumble, a chain of dependency that stretches back to strategic councils where maps dictate destinies. Historically, such endeavors have tilted scales in forgotten campaigns, where unheralded clearances paved ways for triumphs etched in annals, underscoring how the obscure labors underpin the spectacular. A quiet irony where the unseen hand shapes the visible narrative of victory. The valse's tempo demands unwavering focus, yet the mind wanders to analogies drawn from quieter realms, where contemporary navigations through uncertainty mirror this deliberate pacing, probing unseen obstacles in pursuits of progress, where haste invites collapse, and patience emerges as the unsung virtue. There's a poignant undercurrent in the reflection, a recognition that endurance often masquerades as monotony, the repetitive sweep a meditation on persistence amid ambiguity, fostering a subtle appreciation for the interludes where clarity eludes but resolve endures. As the path extends, inch by contested inch, the night's embrace deepens, the moon's arc tracing a path of its own, indifferent to the mortal ballet below, where each successful demarcation defies the odds stacked by adversarial cunning. The humour surfaces in fleeting glimpses, a sardonic musing on how the dance partner's invisibility adds to the thrill, as if courting an elusive suitor whose rejection manifests in cataclysm, a dark jest that lightens the load without diminishing the gravity. The fear, ever present yet subdued, manifests as a gentle tremor in the extremities, a kinetic echo of the psyche's vigilance, drawing empathy for those who preceded in similar shadows, their sacrifices woven into the fabric of collective memory, evoking a silent gratitude for the present's relative poise. In this immersion, the historical tapestry unfolds organically, Alamein's prelude not as an abstract event, but as a lived prelude, where the sapper's discreet heroism salvages multitudes from the brink, honouring the lineage of ingenuity that turns adversity into an avenue. The night's progression carries an aura of predestination, each advance a step in an unfolding saga, where individual agency intersects with larger currents, the valse a metaphor for life's intricate maneuvers through veiled hazards. The breathing aligns with the motion, a rhythmic anchor that tempers the surge of adrenaline, transforming apprehension into attuned awareness, a subtle alchemy where dread fuels discernment. As the corridor lengthens, the landscape's monotony belies its lethality, the uniform undulations hiding variances that demand acute perception, where a single anomaly could unravel the night's labour. The observation drifts in, unforced, a wry contemplation on how the desert's uniformity mocks the seeker's quest, as if the terrain itself participates in the deception, a cosmic prank where uniformity conceals the exceptional peril. The endeavour's solitude amplifies introspection, drawing parallels to isolated vigils in distant times where solitary guardians have held lines against encroaching darkness. Their vigilance acquired ode to the human spark that illuminates obscurity. The chapter of the night begins thus, a prelude to greater trials, where the initial foray sets the tone for the symphony of survival, evoking a profound resonance with those who navigate their own nocturnal uncertainties, finding solace in the shared narrative of steadfastness. In the valse's embrace, the mind settles into a contemplative flow, the physical exertion blending with mental poise, where each cleared segment affirms the possibility of order amid disarray, a testament to the enduring will that defies dissolution. The fear, now a companion rather than adversary, sharpens the senses, fostering a deep-seated empathy for the era's unsung, their legacy a beacon for present traversals through shadowed paths. The dance continues, the moon's gaze unwavering, as the path carves its tentative mark, a fragile assertion against the night's enigma, where persistence whispers of potential dawn. A subtle victory in the face of encompassing void. The detector's hum falters into an insistent whine, a mechanical lament that slices through the nocturnal hush, like a premonition etched in sound, halting your measured advance as if the night itself has drawn a breath. There, beneath the moon's unblinking scrutiny, the signal peaks, pinpointing an anomaly buried in the deceptive calm of the substrate. A subtle bulge where the grains part unnaturally, hinting at something forged in distant foundries rather than nature's indifferent forge. You freeze, the weight of revelation pressing down, transforming the valse into a suspended tableau where motion invites catastrophe, the air thickening with the unspoken gravity of what lies concealed. A teller, that unassuming sentinel of armored demise, its disc form a mocking echo of completeness, designed to slumber until the crush of mechanical might awakens its fury, rending tracks and hulls in a blossom of upheaval. Yet, as your probe delves deeper, parting the veil with painstaking delicacy, a glint betrays the complication, a slender filament, taut as a spider's thread spun from malice, linking this guardian to a companion shadow nearby, where another shape lurks in tandem. The tripwire, that insidious connector, weaves a narrative of amplified treachery, a German innovation born from the calculus of escalation, where one disturbance cascades into multiplicity. The S-mine poised to leap in lethal accompaniment, its ascent a grotesque mockery of liberation, detonating mid-air to scatter fragments like confetti from a funeral pyre. The realization coils within, a serpent of apprehension tightening around the core, amplifying the night's chill that now seeps into bones despite the lingering warmth radiating from the depths. Each bead of perspiration a testament to the body's instinctive rebellion against the intellect's command to proceed. Miller materializes at your side, his presence a grounding force amid the ethereal glow, his whisper a threadbare lifeline cutting through the tension's fog. "Double the devil's handiwork," he breathes, the words laced with a shadowed amusement, as if acknowledging the adversary's cleverness elevates the contest beyond mere mechanics, turning it into a duel of wits where the stakes mock human pretensions of control. Under the lunar pallor, he guides your gaze to the wire's path, tracing its deceptive simplicity, a booby trap layered to ensnare the hasty, transforming a single disarmament into a chain of calamity that could engulf the entire cadre in a symphony of shards. The historical cunning unfolds in his hushed explication. These baits are staple of the Wehrmacht's defensive lexicon, engineered to maximize carnage from minimal disturbance, turning isolated threats into orchestral destructions that bleed assailants before the true engagement commences. Your hands hover, steady yet betraying a fine quiver. The pliers' jaws poised like reluctant executioners. The metal cold against skin, slick with the night's clandestine dew. The act demands an exquisite poise, a suspension of the self where breath holds captive. Time dilating into eternity as the blade nears the strand. The potential snap a harbinger of either salvation or unraveling. Sweat cascades in silent rivulets, tracing paths of vulnerability down your brow, each drop a microcosm of the precipice, where the desert's nocturnal hush amplifies the internal roar, the pulse thundering like distant ordnance, the mind racing through contingencies that dissolve into futility. In this pivotal instant, a fleeting irony surfaces, unvoiced yet palpable. The wire as life's tenuous connections, fragile links that, when severed wrongly, unleash torrents unforeseen, a parallel to contemporary entanglements where one misstep cascades into broader collapse. With Miller's murmured directives anchoring you, steady now, slice the vein before it bleeds. The plier closes, the cut clean yet resounding in the silence, a definitive snip that hangs in the void, pregnant with possibility. The moment stretches, an abyss where expectation teeters, the absence of eruption a victory whispered rather than proclaimed. The teller and its leaping kin neutralized in tandem, their potential fury diffused into harmless inertia. Relief floods in waves, tempered by the night's lingering embrace, the success of fragile bloom in the wasteland's thorned garden, where triumph feels less like conquest and more like a reprieve granted by capricious fates. The team converges, movement synchronized in the aftermath, disarming the pair with methodical efficiency, the teller's casing lifted gingerly to reveal its dormant core, wires clipped and charges neutralized under the moon's impartial beam. Dozens more follow in the ensuing hours, each encounter a variation on the theme of peril averted, the path extending incrementally, a testament to collective vigilance that defies the isolation of the task. The strain manifests in subtle ways, the ache in knees pressed against unforgiving terrain, the strain in eyes scanning for anomalies amid the monochromatic palette. Yet these discomforts weave into the fabric of purpose, where persistence carves meaning from monotony. In the quiet exaltation of each safe extraction, reflections stir, evoking the broader canvas, where such nocturnal labors underpins seismic shifts. Alamain's prelude a mosaic of these discrete victories, the Sapper's silent symphony enabling the thunderous overture to come. The desperation's edge yields a dark mirth, an internal quip on how the mind's dormancy mirrors dormant potentials in quieter lives, awaiting the wrong pressure to erupt, a subtle nod to the value of preemptive grace in navigating hidden fissures. The night's progression deepens the immersion, the cool sands now a canvas for your inscriptions, where each cleared zone defies the entropy that seeks to reclaim, fostering a profound resonance with the era's veiled architects of change. The fear, transmuted into focus, evokes empathy for those who've balanced on similar knives' edges, their fortitude a legacy that illuminates present paths through uncertainty, where knowledge of such trials cultivates appreciation for the untroubled intervals that define existence. As the valse intensifies, the moon's descent signals the labor's crest, the path solidified in ribbons that flutter like banners of tentative dominion, a fragile assertion against the encompassing enigma. The achievement carries an undercurrent of melancholy, a recognition that success here is ephemeral, subject to the dawn's revelations. Yet in that transience lies the essence of valor, the quiet accrual of increments that accumulate into tides of transformation. The team's cohesion strengthens in the shared hush, breaths aligning in rhythmic solidarity, where the night's trials forge bonds unbreakable by daylight's dispersions. The historical weight settles gently. The sappers roll a cornerstone in the edifice of turnaround, their imprints on the sand's precursors to the armoured waves that will surge, honouring the intricate web where individual poise sustains collective momentum. In this crescendo, the mind contemplates the irony of fragility yielding strength. The cut wire a metaphor for severing chains that bind potential to peril, evoking gratitude for the eras where such insights, gleaned from adversity, illuminate contemporary traversals through shadow domains. The chapter of discovery culminates thus, a pinnacle where tension resolves into tentative peace, the night's embrace yielding to the promise of continuation. The desperation's subtle vein pulses through, a wry musing on how victory tastes of deferred defeat, a flavour that lingers, sharpening the palate for the morrows that follow. The path, now etched, stands as a testament to the human imprint on indifference, a quiet rebellion that echoes across the ages. The sequence accelerates now, a cascade of revelations unfolding under the moon's waning gaze, where each subsequent signal from the apparatus heralds another submerged enigma. The team's movements synchronizing into a fluid rite of extraction that blurs the line between repetition and revelation. One after another, the devices surface, their casings emerging like reluctant fossils from eons of concealment. The teller's broad, unyielding profile giving way to the S-mine's slender menace. Each disarmament, a meticulous unraveling of wires and mechanisms that pulse with latent malice, neutralized with clips and careful lifts that demand the precision of a surgeon dissecting fate's knots. The plier bites cleanly time and again, severing connections that once promised devastation, the faint snip echoing into the void, as if mocking the grandeur of their intended symphony, reducing orchestrated chaos to inert scrap, scattered across the cooling expanse. Exhaustion creeps in, like an insidious fog, seeping into limbs that ache with the cumulative toll of kneeling and crouching, the grains adhering to damp skin in a persistent crust that chafes with every shift. A subtle reminder of the terrain's possessive grasp. Sweat mingles with the dust, forming a viscous layer that clings like a second epidermis, heavy and unrelenting, while muscles protest the endless cycle of probe, expose and excise, each motion drawing from reservoirs that dwindle under the night's unyielding scrutiny. The team's breaths labor in unison, ragged yet resolute, a collective rhythm that defies the solitude of the task, where the weight of accumulated victories presses down paradoxically, amplifying the weariness as if success itself exacts a tribute from the victors, a quiet tax on the spirit that leaves one pondering the cost of incremental triumphs in arenas where endurance masquerades as invincibility. Through this procession, the corridor solidifies, a narrow vein etched into the wilderness, barely sufficient for the mechanized beast that will traverse it, yet pivotal in the grander scheme where such conduits channel the flood of reversal against entrenched dominion. Historically, these slender threads have woven the fabric of breakthroughs, enabling the Eighth Army's armored phalanxes to surge forth, their treads grinding over cleared swaths that transform stagnation into momentum, a prelude to the clash, where Montgomery's vision crystallizes into concrete advance, shattering the aura of untouchability that has shrouded the opposition's maneuvers. The path's fragility underscores a deeper verity, unarticulated yet resonant, the way modest labors underpin monumental shifts, where the uncelebrated incisions into peril's hide enable the thunderous strides that history lauds. A subtle irony in how the whisper of disarmament precedes the roar of engagement. Dawn's first tendrils creep across the vista, a gradual infusion of roseate hues that softens the shadows, revealing the trail's meandering form amid the undulating sea, its contours appearing almost ephemeral against the sprawling dominion of concealed hazards. The light exposes the Devil's Gardens in stark relief, a panorama of latent menace where the unmarked expanses dwarf the ribboned sanctuary, evoking a poignant vulnerability, as if the night's efforts amount to a mere scratch on an impervious surface, a defiant gesture against an adversary that sprawls infinitely. In this illumination, the achievement feels both profound and precarious, a momentary assertion swallowed by the immensity, stirring a melancholic appreciation for the transient nature of progress in domains governed by entropy's inexorable pull. Amid the emerging clarity, a relic catches the eye, a tattered boot half entombed in the drifts, its leather cracked and faded, a silent vestige of a predecessor who ventured into this realm only to be claimed by its treachery. The empty form a haunting silhouette against the brightening canvas. The sight pierces subtly, a visual elegy for those who've preceded, their absences etched into the landscape like forgotten footnotes in a saga of attrition, where countless such pioneers have fallen to the garden's grasp, their sacrifices dissolving into anonymity while paving intangible ways for successors. This remnant evokes a wave of empathy, a shared sorrow for the uncounted who balanced on the precipice only to tip over, their stories subsumed by the collective narrative, yet integral to its unfolding. A quiet lament for the erased that deepens the resolve to persist. In the wake of such discoveries, introspection blooms unbidden, a recognition that heroism eludes the grasp here, supplanted by the caprice of fortune, where outcomes hinge not on valor's blaze, but on the whims of wire and pressure, leaving one to muse on the illusion of agency in theatres where chance dons the director's mantle. The soldiers destined to traverse this conduit loom in thought, their fates intertwined with the night's toil. Each step they take a validation of the unseen vigilance, a chain where individual precision safeguards the multitude, fostering a subdued pride tempered by the awareness of interdependence, as if the path's creation mirrors the web of reliances that sustain all endeavors, past and present. The humor emerges in veiled form, a sardonic whisper on how the boot's abandonment mocks the notion of permanence, as if the desert delights in collecting such mementos, curating a gallery of missteps where the living pass through as transient exhibitors, a dark chuckle at the futility of footprints in shifting realms. Yet, this levity dissolves into deeper currents, where the sight stirs gratitude for the fleeting reprieve, a moment to acknowledge the slender margin separating continuation from cessation, evoking parallels to contemporary traversals where overlooked remnants of past struggles remind of the fragility underpinning stability. As the light strengthens, bathing the scene in a golden haze that promises renewal. The path's modesty against the garden's sprawl evokes a poignant humility, a recognition that triumphs here are incremental, woven from threads of tenacity rather than bold strokes, honoring the historical mosaic where such modest feats accumulate into tidal forces of change. The exhaustion's grip loosens slightly in the dawn's embrace, a subtle thaw where weariness yields to the quiet affirmation of purpose fulfilled, the team's shared glances conveying unspoken bonds forged in the crucible of nocturnal trial. The emerging sun casts elongated forms across the cleared vein, illuminating its serpentine grace amid the peril's embrace, a visual poem on resilience's quiet artistry, where the act of negation, disarming the armed, defies the narrative of inevitable loss. In this transition, the mind contemplates the irony of dawn's revelation, exposing both accomplishment and its precariousness, as if light itself conspires to underscore the ephemeral, a wry nod to how illumination often reveals the shadow's depth. The chapter of neutralization culminates in this luminous interlude, where the series of subductions blends into a cohesive whole, the path a testament to the collective will that imposes form on formlessness, evoking empathy for those who've undertaken similar subjugations, their efforts a legacy of quiet defiance against dissolution. The fear's residue lingers, a faint echo that heightens appreciation for the unmarred instants, where survival's grace notes play softly against the backdrop of potential erasure. As the team regroups, the dawn's promise infuses the scene with tentative optimism. The garden's menace momentarily subdued, a respite that honors the human impulse to carve sanctuary from hostility, bridging eras where such acts of reclamation sustain the spirit's flame amid encroaching obscurity. The dawn's gentle veneer peels back, exposing the harsh geometry of the terrain, where the slender ribbon of safety you carved through the night seems a fleeting defiance against the sprawling malevolence that surrounds it. The white tape flutters listlessly in the stirring breeze, a fragile banner stretched taut across the expanse, its edges fraying like the nerves of those who tread its path, a narrow lifeline dwarfed by the vastness of Rommel's engineered abyss, where each unmarked inch pulses with latent betrayal. The morning light, sharp as a blade, reveals the devil's gardens in their unyielding grandeur, an endless mosaic of concealed threats stretching beyond sight, where the illusion of progress mocks the toil expended, as if the desert itself chuckles at the hubris of imposing order on its chaotic canvas. You stand at the trench's edge, body heavy with the night's exertion, the ache in your joints a silent tally of hours spent outwitting death's patient architects. Miller approaches, his stride measured yet burdened, as if each step carries the weight of accumulated survivals, his hand finding your shoulder with a grip that speaks of camaraderie forged in shared peril. Without words, he offers a cigarette, its paper crumpled from days in his pocket, the act a quiet ritual of connection in a world where solitude reigns supreme. You accept. The match's brief flare a defiant spark against the encroaching glare, the first drag sharp and acrid, filling lungs with a warmth that briefly counters the morning's encroaching chill. Better than a medal, eh? He mutters, the quip slipping out with a wry twist, as if suggesting that such small comforts outweigh the hollow promises of recognition. A sardonic nod to the absurdity of seeking glory in fields sown with oblivion. The smoke curls upward, a transient spiral dissipating into the haze, mirroring the fleeting nature of reprieve in this relentless theatre. The newcomer, his face still etched with the night's revelations, lingers nearby, his eyes tracing the path's fragile contour with a mixture of awe and unease, as if grappling with the paradox of its existence, a slender thread of sanctuary amid a tapestry of treachery. He ventures a question, his voice soft yet piercing, cutting through the morning's quietude. How does one reconcile the knowledge that each cleared patch merely postpones the inevitable, that the garden's expanse outlives any single night's triumph? The query hangs, a fragile filament in the still air, evoking a shared silence that speaks louder than words, a collective recognition of the Sisyphean task, where victory is measured not in conquest, but in the deferral of defeat, a quiet lament woven into the fabric of duty. Miller's response is a gesture more than speech, a slow exhale of smoke that carries the weight of countless dawns survived. his gaze fixed on the horizon where the sands blur into a mirage. "You don't," he says at last, the words heavy with the pragmatism of one who's measured life in cleared inches, implying that acceptance of the unending cycle is its form of defiance, a refusal to let futility erode resolve. The exchange stirs a deeper current, unvoiced yet resonant, drawing parallels to the quiet battles waged in distant eras, where persistence against overwhelming odds defines the human endeavor, from ancient builders taming rivers to sappers unraveling engineered snares, each act a testament to the will that carves meaning from the void. Historically, this moment at El Alamein stands as a fulcrum, where the Eighth Army's meticulous preparations, sappers' paths enabling the armored surge, herald a turning point. Montgomery's calculated gamble poised to fracture the Axis's desert dominion. A victory not of flamboyance but of accumulated increments, where the uncelebrated toil of nights like these lays the groundwork for strategic upheaval. The paths, fragile as they seem, are arteries of advance, channeling the momentum that will shift the war's tide. A silent choreography where the sapper's precision underpins the spectacle of armored clashes, a historical truth that lends gravity to the morning's reflection, where the individual's labor merges into the collective narrative of reversal. As you share the cigarette, passing it back with a nod, the act becomes a bridge across isolation, a silent pact that binds the weary in their shared vigil, fostering a profound empathy for those who've navigated similar precipices, their sacrifices the unseen scaffolding of progress. The fear, a constant undercurrent, manifests as a subtle tremor in the hand that holds the ember, a reminder of the fragility that underpins even this moment of respite, evoking a quiet gratitude for the intervals where peril pauses, allowing breath to steady and thoughts to wander. The mind drifts to contemporary parallels, where unseen pressures lurk beneath routine, demanding vigilance akin to probing the sands, a wry observation that life's trials, though less explosive, require the same deliberate poise to navigate without detonation. The landscape's vastness amplifies the melancholy, the path's modesty a stark contrast to the unending expanse, where the garden's silent menace seems to mock the effort, as if the desert delights in its role as eternal adversary, collecting victories and losses with equal indifference. Yet, in this contrast lies a subtle irony, a dark humor that surfaces in the thought that the tape's flimsy presence outlives its creator's intent, a fleeting inscription on a canvas that erases all marks with time's passage, a chuckle at the notion that humanity's defiance is both profound and ephemeral, a gesture as futile as it is vital. The interaction deepens as the newcomer absorbs Miller's sparse wisdom, his initial trepidation softening into a tentative resolve, mirroring the transformation that adversity forges, where fear evolves into focus, binding the disparate into a cohesive whole. The cigarette's ember fades, its warmth a fleeting counterpoint to the morning's encroaching heat, yet the act of sharing it lingers, a ritual that honors the human impulse to connect amid desolation, a quiet rebellion against the isolation that war imposes. As the sun climbs, casting stark shadows that elongate the path's contours, the reality of the task settles heavier, the knowledge that this corridor is but one of many, a single vein in a network that must span the breadth of Rommel's defenses before the onslaught can commence. The historical weight presses gently, the sappers roll a cornerstone in the edifice of turnaround, their labor enabling the surge that will redefine the campaign's trajectory, a silent ode to the unsung whose precision carves pathways through chaos. The moment's stillness fosters introspection, the mind contemplating the irony of survival's reliance on such precarious threads, where the act of sharing a cigarette mirrors the broader web of dependencies that sustain progress, from ancient artisans to modern navigators of uncertainty. The fear's quiet pulse sharpens appreciation for the unmarred instants, evoking a profound empathy for those who've endured similar trials, their legacies a beacon for present paths through shadowed domains. As the team prepares to withdraw, the path stands as a testament to the night's labor, a fragile assertion against the encompassing enigma, where each cleared segment defies the entropy that seeks to reclaim, fostering a subtle gratitude for the present's relative calm. The interaction, though brief, weaves a tapestry of connection, where shared glances and sparse words affirm the resilience that binds eras, a quiet victory in the face of relentless adversity. The retreat to the trench unfolds like a pilgrimage in reverse, a weary procession back to the shallow scar in the earth that passes for sanctuary, where the dawn's light now scalds rather than soothes, its rays a relentless interrogator peeling back the night's fragile veil. Your body protests each step, muscles taut from hours of crouching vigilance, the sand's grip tugging at boots as if reluctant to release its claim, each grain a minute shackle binding you to the ordeal just endured. The air thickens with the day's burgeoning heat, a suffocating shroud that presses against your chest, mingling with the faint, acrid residue of expended effort, while the trench looms ahead, its jagged outline a crude embrace offering respite tinged with the promise of repetition, a cyclical return to the crucible where rest is merely a pause before the next foray. You collapse into the trench's confines, the earth's coarse embrace jarring against weary bones, the act less a surrender to comfort than a capitulation to exhaustion's insistent pull. Your kit bag, a makeshift pillow, cradling a head heavy with the night's accumulations. The team scatters around you, their forms slumped in mirrored fatigue, faces etched with the silent toll of their nocturnal dance, eyes hollowed by the strain of defying the unseen. From a dented tin, you extract the familiar bulk of bully beef, its salted heft unyielding beneath a blunt knife, paired with biscuits that crumble like ancient relics, their texture a gritty testament to sustenance stripped to its barest essence. Each bite is mechanical, a ritual to fuel the body rather than delight the palate, yet in its simplicity lies a quiet defiance, a refusal to let the desert's austerity erode the will to endure. The newcomer, his features sharpened by the night's crucible, settles nearby, his hands fumbling with a similar ration, his gaze flickering between the tin and the horizon, as if seeking answers in the haze where sand and sky blur into ambiguity. His voice breaks the stillness, tentative yet probing, like a stone cast into a still pond. How does one summon the resolve to face this relentless cycle, to venture again into the abyss when the dawn reveals the task's unending expanse? The question lingers, heavy with the weight of initiation, its ripples stirring a shared silence that binds the group, a collective pause where the enormity of the undertaking settles like dust after a storm, evoking a subtle empathy for the novice's dawning realization of the war's unyielding rhythm. Miller, leaning against the trench's edge, responds with a measured gravitas, his voice a low cadence that carries the authority of experience tempered by weariness. Because if we don't, no one else will, he says, the words falling like stones into the quiet, their simplicity belying the profound burden they carry. A declaration that duty's mantle is worn not from choice but necessity, a quiet resignation that cloaks itself in purpose. His gaze drifts to the distant line where the path you carved fades into a mirage, a wry curl touching his lips, as if amused by the notion that such fragile assertions could challenge the desert's dominion. A dark jest at the futility of resisting an adversary that measures time in millennia while men count in heartbeats. The exchange deepens, weaving a thread of connection through the fatigue, where words become a bridge across the isolation that the vastness imposes, fostering a kinship that transcends the immediate. Historically, this moment at Alamein marks a prelude to transformation, where the sappers' incremental labours, clearing paths through the labyrinth of mines, enable the seismic barrage that will herald Montgomery's offensive, a deluge of artillery unmatched since the Great War's cataclysms, poised to fracture the Axis's grip on the desert's throat. The trenches, these temporary refuges, are staging grounds for a broader symphony, where each cleared corridor amplifies the collective pulse, a silent orchestration that underpins the clash to come, honouring the unsung whose precision forges the fulcrum of history's pivot. As you chew the unyielding beef, the act stirs reflections unbidden, the mind wandering to parallels where modern burdens echo this cyclical grind, where the daily wrestle with unseen pressures mirrors the sapper's nightly foray, demanding resilience in the face of repetition's quiet erosion. There's a subtle irony in the thought, a wry musing that life's demands, though less lethal, require a similar fortitude, where persistence through monotony becomes its own form of valour, a quiet nod to the shared human endeavour across eras to impose order on chaos's sprawl. The meal's austerity amplifies this, each bite a reminder of the bare necessities that sustain, evoking gratitude for the moments where survival is enough, where the act of continuing defies the weight of inevitability. The conversation shifts, the newcomer's voice gaining strength as he shares fragments of his own story. A small town in Devon, dreams of a life beyond the plough, now suspended in this alien crucible where ambition bows to survival's dictate. His words evoke a shared longing, a collective ache for places where the air carries the scent of rain-soaked fields rather than the arid tang of desolation, fostering a profound empathy for those who carry homes in their hearts while navigating foreign perils. Miller listens, his silence a canvas for the novice's confessions, his occasional nod a silent affirmation that these stories matter, that they weave the fabric of camaraderie that holds the line against despair's encroachment. The heat intensifies, pressing against skin like an insistent creditor. Yet the trench's confines offer a semblance of reprieve, a shadowed nook where thoughts can drift without the immediate threat of detonation. The mind contemplates the cyclical nature of the task, the knowledge that tonight will demand another venture into the abyss, a repetition that tests the spirit's elasticity. Yet in that rhythm lies a deeper truth, that endurance is forged in the crucible of recurrence, where each return to the fray refines the resolve. The historical weight settles softly, the sappers roll a linchpin in the machinery of advance, their quiet labour enabling the surge that will reshape the campaign's narrative, a testament to the power of incremental defiance. The fear, a constant undercurrent, surfaces in fleeting tremors, a quiet pulse that sharpens the senses, evoking a subtle gratitude for the intervals where peril pauses, allowing the mind to wander to greener realms. The irony emerges unvoiced, a dark chuckle at the notion that rest here is merely a prelude to further trials, as if the desert delights in its role as taskmaster, offering sanctuary only to demand renewed tribute. Yet, in this pause, the camaraderie solidifies, the shared stories a bulwark against the isolation, honouring the timeless impulse to connect amid adversity's sprawl. As the conversation ebbs, the trench becomes a temporary haven, its walls a fragile fortress against the day's escalating demands, where the act of sharing sustenance and stories weaves a tapestry of resilience, a quiet rebellion against the entropy that seeks to unravel. The cycle looms, unyielding yet formative, a reminder that survival's grace lies in embracing the repetition, finding meaning in the mundane acts that bridge the chasm between despair and dawn. The trench's embrace feels less like refuge now, and more like a temporary stay of execution, its walls a flimsy bulwark against the sun's relentless ascent, which bathes the world in a molten glow that promises no mercy, only the certainty of another cycle poised to unfold. You slump against the earth, the coarse grains imprinting patterns on your palms, their texture a silent chronicle of the night's exertions, while the heat wraps around you like a shroud woven from embers, its weight pressing breath into shallow sips, as if the air itself conspires to ration vitality. The knowledge that dusk will summon you back to the labyrinth, to probe once more the unseen snares, settles like a stone in the chest, its presence both anchor and burden, a reminder that survival here is a lease renewed nightly, each extension purchased with vigilance and grit. Your kit lies scattered, a disarrayed arsenal of probes and pliers, their surfaces dulled by use yet gleaming with purpose, each tool a relic of defiance against the desert's buried malice. The act of checking them feels ceremonial, a quiet preparation for the inevitable return, where the moon will again cast its spectral net over the dunes, illuminating paths that mock permanence with their fragility. The horizon shimmers with deceptive calm, its undulations hiding the intricate web of hazards that await, a silent adversary that demands not courage but calculation, where each step forward is a gamble against oblivion's patient odds. In this interlude, the mind drifts to distant shores, to a Sussex tavern where the air carries the tang of hops and the murmur of carefree evenings, a vision so vivid it stings, juxtaposing the parched reality with a mirage of solace that feels both cruel and sustaining. A faint breeze stirs, carrying the acrid scent of distant smoke, a vestige of the war machine's ceaseless churn, and with it comes the weight of history's impending crescendo, the barrage that will herald El Alamein's dawn, a thunderous overture that will shake the sands with the force of 1,000 guns, a spectacle unmatched since the last war's apocalyptic volleys. This moment, poised on the cusp of October 23rd, 1942, is not merely a pause but a pivot, where the sappers' silent labor lays the foundation for a seismic shift, enabling the armored surge that will challenge the desert fox's dominion, a historical fulcrum where incremental acts coalesce into transformative tides. The thought evokes a quiet reverence, a recognition that your role, though obscured in the annals, is the keystone that unlocks the path to reversal, a subtle irony where the uncelebrated stitch holds the fabric of victory together. In this stillness, a wry observation surfaces, unvoiced yet sharp, the notion that the desert's relentless cycle mirrors the grind of modern existence, where each day demands a return to unseen battles, whether against buried threats or the intangible weights of obligation. A dark chuckle at the thought that life's endurance tests are universal, differing only in their stakes. The preparation for tonight's foray feels like threading a needle through chaos, where the act of reading becomes a meditation on persistence, a defiance of the entropy that seeks to unravel all efforts into dust. The tools, now cleaned and stowed, carry the weight of this ritual, their heft a reminder of the delicate balance between control and caprice, where mastery lies not in conquest, but in the meticulous avoidance of calamity. The newcomer's presence lingers nearby, his silhouette a study in transformation, the boyish uncertainty of yesterday hardening into a tentative resolve, his hands now steady as they trace the contours of his own gear, mirroring your own motions with a quiet mimicry that speaks of adaptation's quiet alchemy. His gaze meets yours, a silent question hovering in the air, not voiced but palpable. How does one brace for the repetition, for the knowledge that the night's trials will demand another performance, another dance with the unseen? You offer no words, only a nod, letting the silence convey the truth that endurance is its own answer, a cycle where resolve is forged in the crucible of recurrence, a shared understanding that binds you in this fleeting haven. The heat intensifies, a relentless adversary that presses against skin like an insistent creditor. Yet in its oppression lies a strange clarity, stripping away illusions to reveal the core of purpose, each preparation a defiance of the inevitable, a quiet assertion that meaning can be wrested from monotony. The mind wanders to parallels across time, where others have faced similar recursions, from ancient navigators charting unyielding seas to modern seekers navigating labyrinths of doubt. Each cycle a testament to the human impulse to persist, to carve order from the formless, evoking a profound empathy for those whose labors have shaped the unseen scaffolding of progress. A dark humor bubbles up, a fleeting musing on the absurdity of preparing for another night in the gardens, as if the desert keeps a ledger of your efforts, granting reprieve only to demand further tribute, a sardonic nod to the notion that survival's currency is paid in sleepless vigilance. Yet, this levity softens the edge of dread, fostering a subtle gratitude for the moments where the world pauses, allowing breath to steady and thoughts to drift, a reminder that even in the harshest arenas, the spirit finds slivers of solace to sustain its flame. As the day presses on, the trench's confines grow stifling, the air thick with the promise of renewal and risk, yet the ritual of preparation anchors you, a quiet liturgy that transforms anticipation into resolve. The historical weight settles gently. The sappers roll a silent pulse in the machinery of advance, their paths enabling the surge that will redefine the campaign's arc, a testament to the power of incremental defiance against an adversary that measures victories in lifetimes eroded. The fear, a constant companion, weaves through these reflections, a subtle tremor that sharpens awareness, evoking a quiet appreciation for the unmarred instants where survival feels like a gift, a fleeting grace note in the symphony of persistence. The mind's wanderings coalesce into a deeper truth, unvoiced yet resonant. The way these cycles of preparation mirror the broader human endeavor, where each return to the fray refines the spirit, forging resilience from the raw material of repetition. The Sussex vision lingers, a fragile beacon against the desert's austerity, its promise of simplicity, a counterpoint to the complexity of the task, reminding that the pursuit of meaning transcends eras, uniting the sapper's vigil with the quiet battles waged in distant lives. As the sun climbs higher, its rays a relentless reminder of the day's demands. The trench becomes a crucible where resolve is tempered, a space where the act of readying becomes a quiet rebellion against the entropy that seeks to reclaim. The preparation for tomorrow's night is not merely tactical but existential, a commitment to continue despite the weight of inevitability, a silent ode to the endurance that binds the past to the present, fostering a profound empathy for those who navigate their own cycles of trial and triumph. The trench's jagged walls blur into a cocoon of earth and shadow, their coarse edges softened by the day's waning light, as you sink beneath the tattered canvas that serves as a frail shield against the sun's lingering wrath. its folds drape like a weary sentinel, casting dappled patterns across your frame, a patchwork of refuge where the world's relentless clamour fades to a distant murmur, leaving only the pulse of your own breath to mark time's passage. The canvas ripples faintly, stirred by a breeze that carries not the desert's scorched bite, but a whisper of reprieve, as if the air itself conspires to cradle you in this fleeting interstice, where the weight of nocturnal trials recedes, and the body begins to unravel its knotted tensions, thread by weary thread. Your shoulders, taut from hours of poised vigilance, loosen imperceptibly, the rigidity melting as if persuaded by the canvas's gentle sway, each muscle releasing its grip like a fist unclenching after a long-held grudge. The ache in your limbs softens, a dull throb that ebbs with each measured inhale, the rhythm of breath becoming a quiet metronome, guiding you deeper into repose, away from the jagged edges of memory where wires and warnings still linger like unquiet spirits. The air, though heavy with the day's residual heat, carries a faint hum, perhaps the drone of distant insects, their chorus a subtle counterpoint to the silence, weaving a tapestry of sound that lulls rather than alarms, a delicate invitation to let the mind drift from the desert's stark canvas to softer vistas. In this suspended moment, imagination unfurls, conjuring not the arid expanse, but a distant breeze from England's shores, where fields of emerald sway under a sky heavy with promise, their verdant hues a balm against the ochre desolation that surrounds you. The vision is vivid, almost tangible. The scent of damp earth after rain, the rustle of leaves in a Sussex grove, a stark contrast to the unyielding grit that clings to your skin, a reminder of places where peril does not lurk beneath every step. Yet, there's a quiet irony in the conjuring, a wry acknowledgement that such reveries are luxuries, borrowed moments in a theatre where survival demands constant vigilance, as if the mind's escape is a brief desertion from duty. A chuckle at the audacity of dreaming peace amid a landscape sculpted for strife. Historically, this pause resonates with the sappers' unsung legacy, their nocturnal labours a silent prelude to the seismic shift at El Alamein, where paths cleared through the mines enabled Montgomery's thunderous barrage, a deluge of artillery that reverberated across the desert, heralding the Axis's retreat. The Polish mine detector, that ingenious relic of displaced brilliance, amplified their efficacy, its electronic whispers doubling the pace of clearance, a testament to how adversity births innovation, turning exile into empowerment. This moment of rest, though fleeting, mirrors the broader arc, where intervals of stillness fortify the spirit for the surge, a historical truth that imbues the quiet with purpose, as if each breath taken here fuels the momentum that will reshape the campaign's narrative. The body responds, aligning with the mind's gradual descent, your hands resting lightly on the canvas's edge, fingers tracing its frayed weave as if mapping a path through memory's gentler terrain. The fear, a constant undercurrent, recedes to a faint ripple, no longer a tempest, but a subtle tide, lapping at the edges of awareness without overwhelming it, fostering a profound empathy for those who found solace in similar pauses, their resilience a beacon across eras. The mind wanders to contemporary echoes, where modern stresses mirror this delicate balance, moments of reprieve snatched from the grind, where the act of pausing becomes a quiet rebellion against the relentless march of expectation, a dark humour in the thought that even now one seeks sanctuary in fleeting silences, as if time itself conspires to offer breath between burdens. The canvas's shadow deepens, its folds a gentle curtain against the world's harsh glare, and the insect hum grows softer, a lullaby woven from the desert's sparse offerings, urging the mind to release its grip on the tools and tensions that define the night. The breath slows, each exhalation a deliberate release, carrying away fragments of the strain that clung like dust, transforming the body into a vessel of calm, its contours softening as if molded by the air's tender insistence. In this surrender, a subtle gratitude emerges, unvoiced yet palpable, for the unmarred instant, for the chance to rest without the immediate threat of eruption, a recognition that these intervals, however brief, are lifelines that sustain the spirit through cycles of trial. The historical weight settles gently, the sappers roll a quiet pulse in the machinery of advance, their paths a foundation for the armored surge that will redefine the desert's narrative, a testament to the power of incremental acts in the face of monumental odds. The mind contemplates the irony of repose amid such stakes, a wry musing that rest here is a paradox, a momentary theft from the desert's ledger, where every pause is a borrowed luxury, repaid with the next night's vigil, a chuckle at the notion that tranquility is merely a prelude to further defiance. As the canvas sways, its rhythm aligns with your own, a subtle dance where the body's tensions dissolve into the earth, the fear's faint echo now a distant companion, sharpening appreciation for the present's fragile calm. The vision of England lingers, a beacon of simplicity that contrasts with the complexity of the task, evoking a profound empathy for those who've navigated similar interstices, their pauses a legacy of endurance that illuminates present paths through shadowed realms. The hum of insects fades, replaced by the quiet cadence of your breath, a rhythm that anchors you to this moment, where the desert's harsh lessons soften into a narrative of resilience, honoring the timeless impulse to find solace amid strife. The body, now pliant, yields to the canvas's embrace, its weight a gentle reminder of existence's tenacity, a quiet ode to the human spark that persists through cycles of challenge and reprieve. In this gentle descent, the mind releases its hold on the night's trials, drifting toward a horizon where the desert's austerity gives way to imagined fields, their verdant promise a counterpoint to the arid reality, fostering a subtle gratitude for the moments where survival feels like grace. The historical tapestry weaves through, the sapper's legacy a silent thread in the fabric of triumph, their quiet labours enabling the surge that will echo across time. A reminder that even the smallest pauses fortify the spirit for the journey ahead. The canvas's shadow deepens, a final veil against the day's demands, and the body settles, its contours merging with the earth's, as if the trench itself conspires to cradle you in this fleeting sanctuary, where the act of resting becomes a quiet rebellion against the relentless tide of duty. The canvas above sways like a tattered veil, its folds casting fleeting shadows that dance across your form. A gentle pendulum lulling the world into a quieter cadence as the day's heat relents, yielding to twilight's tender embrace. You lie still, nestled in the trench's coarse cradle, its earthen walls a mute witness to the burden shed, their roughness softened by the weight of exhaustion that presses you deeper into repose, as if the ground itself seeks to claim you for its own. The air carries a faint hum, not of menace now, but of nocturnal murmurs. Crickets weaving a fragile chorus, their notes threading through the stillness, a delicate tapestry that unravels the day's jagged edges, inviting the mind to release its grip on the relentless cycle of vigilance and peril. Your breath slows, each inhalation a deliberate draw, pulling in the cooling essence that washes away the residue of scorched hours, exhaling the phantom tremors that lingered from nights spent probing the earth's secrets. The tension in your frame dissolves, shoulders sinking as if unburdened by an unseen hand, the ache in limbs fading like a tide receding from a weathered shore, leaving only the gentle pulse of existence, steady and unhurried, a rhythm that aligns with the desert's nocturnal heartbeat. In this surrender, the mind drifts to imagined havens, where a Sussex pub glows with amber warmth, its wooden beams heavy with the laughter of evenings unmarred by war, the clink of a pint glass, a distant echo against the silence, a vision so vivid it soothes like a balm, yet carries a wry sting. The irony that such simplicity feels like a treasure hoarded beyond reach, a fleeting mirage in a landscape that offers only austerity. Historically, this moment weaves into the broader tapestry of Alamein, where the sappers' silent labours, those cleared paths through Rommel's labyrinth, enabled Montgomery's triumph, a victory etched in the thunder of October 23rd, 1942, when the barrage roared like a primal awakening, shattering the Axis's desert dominion and marking a pivot in the war's relentless narrative. The Polish mine detector, that unassuming marvel of displaced ingenuity, doubled the tempo of clearance, its electronic whispers a lifeline that turned peril into passage, a testament to how necessity forges innovation, transforming the margins of exile into the fulcrum of advance. This quiet interlude, though uncelebrated, mirrors the broader arc, where pauses fortify the spirit for the surge, a historical echo that imbues the stillness with purpose, as if the desert's vastness conspires to cradle the resolve that reshapes empires. The body yields further, its contours melding with the earth's, as if gravity itself has softened, inviting you to sink deeper into the embrace of repose, the canvas above a fragile canopy against the world's demands. The fear, once a sharp undercurrent, now ebbs to a distant pulse, a faint echo that no longer governs but observes, a silent companion that sharpens the appreciation for this unmarred instant, where survival feels like a gift unwrapped in the hush. The mind wanders to contemporary parallels, where modern seekers navigate their own shadowed terrains, wrestling with intangible burdens that demand the same quiet fortitude. A dark chuckle at the thought that life's trials, though less explosive, require a similar grace to traverse without collapse. A subtle nod to the shared human endeavour to find meaning in the pause between pressures. The cricket's song fades, blending into the rhythm of your breath, each exhalation a gentle release, carrying away fragments of the day's weight, transforming the trench into a sanctuary where the mind can drift without tether, free from the specter of wires and warnings. The vision of Sussex lingers, its pastoral promise a counterpoint to the desert's stark canvas, evoking a profound empathy for those who found solace in similar respites. Their pauses a legacy of endurance that illuminates present paths through uncertainty. The historical weight settles softly. The sappers roll a quiet thread in the fabric of triumph, their labour enabling the surge that redefined the campaign, a testament to the power of incremental acts in the face of monumental odds. In this gentle descent, the irony surfaces unvoiced, a wry musing on how rest in such a place feels like a theft from fate's ledger, a momentary reprieve stolen from the relentless march of duty, as if the desert permits this pause only to demand renewed tribute at dusk's call. Yet, this levity softens into gratitude, a recognition that these intervals, however fleeting, are lifelines that sustain the spirit, fostering a quiet reverence for the unscarred moments that punctuate strife, where the act of breathing becomes a rebellion against erosion. The canvas's sway slows, its rhythm aligning with your own, A delicate dance where the body's contours merge with the earth's, the fear's faint echo now a distant memory, sharpening the appreciation for the present's fragile calm. The historical tapestry weaves through, the sappers' legacy a silent pulse in the machinery of advance, their paths a foundation for the armored surge that will echo across time, a reminder that even the smallest acts ripple through time, fostering a profound gratitude for the present's peace, where survival feels like grace. As the world recedes, the hum of insects dissolves into silence, replaced by the steady cadence of your breath, a rhythm that anchors you to this moment, where the desert's harsh lessons soften into a story of resilience, honoring the timeless impulse to find sanctuary amid strife. The body, now pliant, yields to the earth's embrace, its weight a gentle reminder of existence's tenacity, a quiet ode to the human spark that persists through cycles of challenge and reprieve. Sleep beckons now, a gentle tide pulling you under, the trench a cradle where the day's burdens dissolve into the night's velvet embrace, the Sussex vision a final beacon fading into the hush. The words drift softly, a whispered benediction. Sleep, Sapper, let the sands guard you tonight, their ancient vigil a shield against tomorrow's trials. The exhaustion wraps around you, a soothing mantle, drawing you deeper into the stillness, where the desert's austerity yields to imagined fields, their verdant promise a counterpoint to the reality left behind. In this final surrender, the mind releases its hold, thoughts dissolving into the quiet, where the fear's last whispers fade, leaving only the rhythm of breath, slow and steady, a testament to the endurance that binds eras. The historical echo lingers. Montgomery's victory a distant triumph enabled by your silent labor, a reminder that even the smallest acts ripple through time, fostering a profound gratitude for the present's peace, where survival feels like grace. As the world recedes, the canvas's shadow merges with the night, the trench a sanctuary where the body rests, its contours softened by the earth's embrace, and the story of Alamein fades into a whisper, a quiet ode to the resilience that carries you into sleep's deep embrace, where the desert's trials dissolve into the promise of renewal. As the desert's whispers fade, you've walked the sapper's path through Rommel's shadowed gardens, where each step defied oblivion's silent call. The trenches, the probes, the fragile ribbons of safety, they linger now as echoes of resilience, woven into Alamein's triumph, a testament to quiet valor under moonlit dunes. Let your body soften, dear listener, muscles unwinding like threads of a loosened knot, breath flowing gentle as a Sussex breeze. Release the day's burdens. Let the sands cradle you into slumber's embrace. If wakefulness lingers, share your thoughts below. Where do these tales find you? Under what stars? Tomorrow night, another story awaits, whispering history's lessons to soothe your restless soul. For now, sleep softly, guarded by the desert's ancient hush, until dawn renews its gentle promise.